hope you like the ending results. We've all heard about the story about the woman at the well. How she went to draw water. There was a man sitting there and asked her for some water. A man that knew everything about her. When she answered the questions, Jesus said, "You're right. The man you're with now isn't your husband." What did she do? She ran to the town, told everybody about a man that knew everything about her. Well, I ran into a man like that back in 1994. It was 1 year after sitting in Cook County Jail in Chicago, Illinois, with 10 felony counts against me. 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder, 2 counts of home invasion, 2 counts of armed robbery, and 2 counts of burglary. On December 31st, 1992, I was with a man that killed 2 people. Fast forward, or actually let's back up. What led me to that point is my addictions. I was an alcoholic, cocaine user, marijuana, heroin, but I never used a needle. It was snorting the heroin, so it's still part of that addiction. I was stealing from my family to support my habits. They gave me the ultimatum, either clean your act up or get out of the house. Well, I got out of the house. Nowhere to go, ended up on the streets, ultimately ended up in a shelter. There was an individual in the shelter that he was trying to get some money. Me, in my distorted way of thinking, was, okay, let me take part in this, because this money is going to put me back on my feet, get me out of the shelter, clean my act up, and everything's going to be hunky-dory. Well, all right, in 2 minutes, I've already shocked everybody in the room. Because, see, here's the question. How many of you have seen that in me? We don't see those things. I just spent 2 days in Asheville at a conference, and I'm going to get back to the testimony part, but this is part of it. It was for the Gospel Rescue Missions Conference. Rescue missions from all over the country. The only thing that was missing, and I thank God that facility wasn't there, is the one that I spent time in. Because what I heard yesterday and today was not the rescue mission that I ended up in 1992. And I let them know that. So my testimony actually started yesterday in Asheville. So getting back to the story, I'm in the county jail, looking at the death sentence, because the state of Illinois was going to push for that no matter what. In all total, there were 3 of us involved in this. Myself, the man that actually pulled the trigger, and the man that planned it. After about 6 months, that's when my mom actually started accepting my phone calls. Of course, they saw it all on the news. I can only imagine what they thought, the looks on their face. But I do know this, that their oldest son just tore the family apart. I thought about that after the fact. Because had I have thought about it prior to all of this, I would have asked for help. But see, my pride denied that. There was no asking for help. Because as a man in an addiction, I can do this on my own. I can stop when I want to stop. I got this. So after being able to have that phone call with my mom, of course, there were a lot of tears. My dad was, of course, he was tore up about it. But it wasn't until about a year later, in 1994, when I thought I had enough. When you are at your bottom, they always say when you find yourself in the pit, the only way to get out is to stop digging. There's nowhere else lower to go. There's one more place to go, and that's on your knees. But see, I got on my knees. I yelled at God. I shook my fist at God. I cussed God. I doubted God. I probably called him every name that I knew and then probably made up some. But the message was loud and clear. Okay, when you're done yelling, I'm still standing here with my arms ready to open wide and accept you. So that point, after I got all that frustration and rage out, things started to change, especially with my mom and dad. Did it all change like that? Oh no. I had to rebuild a lot of trust with my family. But the whole thing is that when it started, I thought I can do this on my terms. Okay, God, I'm going to put you right here in my pocket. When I need you, I'll pull you out. But I'm going to do this. The first 10 years, back up, I spent 3 years, 3 months in Cook County Jail fighting this. The first offer that the state of Illinois offered me was 80 years in the penitentiary. They took the death penalty off, but they offered 80. I said, nope, let's go to trial. I'm guilty. I was there when it happened. I didn't do anything to stop it. I'm still accountable for another person's actions because I didn't do anything to stop what should have been stopped. About 2 months later, they said, okay, how about 60 years? I said, give me a pen. I accepted a 60-year sentence in March of 1996. In Illinois, you've got to do 50%, so I only had to do 30 years. Some are like, 30 years, that's a lifetime. For some, it is. Some people don't even make it to 30. But one thing that I did do, even though I was still playing with God and saying, okay, I'm going to do it my way, but guess what? It's going to be my terms. One thing that I was thankful for was the fact that I actually sent the judge a letter asking for somebody from the family to be at my sentencing. And if you Google my name, you're going to see all the headlines. But the one that was at the top of the page last week when I did it to see what was all there again was that Stodola apologizes to the family. I looked at their oldest son and I said, I apologize for my failures. I could have prevented this from happening, but I chose not to do anything. And that I hope that at some point in your life you can forgive me for my lack of action. Their oldest son was actually sitting the row behind my mom and dad. I only saw my mom and dad and their oldest son. Everybody else was a blank. But there were other family and friends that were there. Their oldest son nodded to me in acknowledgement. He heard what I had to say. And I turned my back and I went right to the judge and I said, thank you. I told the judge, thank you for 60 years. Because something inside up until that point said, okay, you know what? Everything's going to work out. And anybody that has heard Manny Mills talk, he always said, we don't know how things are going to work out, but we know who is going to make them work out. Okay? But like I said, this was still when I was dabbling. I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm still getting drunk and high in the county jail because that's how I was trying to mask the pain. So after I was sentenced to 60 years by the judge, the oldest son actually met with my mom and dad afterwards. I was never told the exact words that were said, but my mom said the only thing that he said was everything was going to be all right. I actually read the newspaper articles, and they said the same thing, that they had met with my mom and dad, the conversation happened, and that everything was going to be all right. He didn't blame me because I was into a situation that I was manipulated into. So for the first 10 years, from 1993 up until January 21st, 2003, I was getting drunk and high every day in the prison. I was making my own whiskey. It was cheaper that way. The drugs were still plentiful if it was dry on the street, so there was plenty in the penitentiary. In the state of Illinois, I went through 7 different facilities. And in each one of them was a struggle because my addiction still had a hold on me. I'm not proud to be able to stand up here and share these things because as a man, I should have had my stuff together. I should never have been able to get to that point in life. I was 23 years old when I went to jail. I'm 52 years old right now. 28 years in the penitentiary, up until April 4th when I was released of this year. That's how, and I got to stop right there and just say thank you to you and this church and to Chuck and to Chris. Because see, I caught Chuck's last service at Cross Point and then came over here with him. And I'll tell you what, to walk in those doors and feel the love from day one, to be able to feel that family feeling. You didn't know me from Adam. You, of course, didn't know any of this. But these are the issues that, from the last 2 days, I've learned quite a bit, that are struggles in today's church. Because you don't know what I'm going through. Just like I don't know what Phil's dealing with, or Jeff, or Melissa, or anybody else in here. But we are all dealing with something. We all have family members that are dealing with something. In the church, it should be, here I am preaching. I'm not trying to take your job. All right? But these last 2 days were a blessing to be in Asheville at the Billy Graham Training Center for this. Because, see, today I actually gave part of my testimony there with Manny because he does prison ministry. If anybody is sitting here, or we know anybody that is dealing with something that we've already been through, you got the directory, reach out. Because if we can't be there for each other, who can we be there for? And I'm just a man, I'm a broken vessel that's been put back together. And I don't care who sees what cracks. Okay? It's just, anybody know what a mosaic is? Rose? Right, little broken pieces of glass, rock, whatever. But when they're all back together, what is it? It's a beautiful picture. I might still have a few pieces missing. Okay? But I thank God for every one of the cracks that I have because He's the one that's mended it. He's the one that actually, it's His grace that I can stand here and do what I'm doing tonight. I don't know how many people read it in a directory, but there was that one question about gifts. And when I saw that question, I'm like, what the heck do I put down for gifts? And all I can do is I just want to be a living example of what God's grace can do. So 4 weeks ago, we were sitting in this room about this time, and I gave a partial testimony about my 28 years in the penitentiary. Because, see, there was another family member in our church that was dealing with that. And I didn't know it, that there was another individual here that was dealing with it. I was sitting right here. I didn't see anybody behind me So I don't know the reactions of what was on people's faces when they heard that I was in prison for 28 years. I saw them today, okay, because some of you weren't there. But it's a blessing to be here. Addictions are not fun. My rehab was cold turkey. Well, I guess I weaned myself off. Because January 21st, 2003 was the last time I had a drink, a joint, a line, because not only was that my birthday, but the next day I was being transferred from Stateville Penitentiary in Joliet to Lawrenceville in Lawrence, Illinois. So that night, drunk and high, since I was going out with a bang, what else can I do? I said, you know what? All right, enough is enough. God, starting tomorrow, if there's any positive program that you place in front of me, I'm going to take full advantage of it. I don't care what it is. I'm done. It's over with. I can't do this anymore. Because the homemade whiskey, if you didn't know what you were doing, I've known guys that went blind from it. You never knew when you were going to get a bad batch of cocaine in the penitentiary. So I guess God still had his hand in it, even though I was still doing all the garbage. But the thing is, God's grace, his love, his mercy, because if I would have got what I truly deserved, I definitely wouldn't be standing here. I would still be behind a wall in Illinois, living my life in the penitentiary, only because the governor commuted all the death sentences. So I guess, thank you, but if that had to happen that way, who knows what would have happened. I may not have lived to this age. Because, see, even in the penitentiary, going through everything, having to rebuild that relationship with my mom and my dad, suicide was a thought. Not just the drugs and the alcohol could have killed me, but even suicide. I thought about that a few times. But what stopped me from that was, it was God. But I thought about the pain and the suffering that my mom and dad went through on New Year's Eve, 92, 93, when it broke on the news. That was what kept me from really doing something stupid. So being in the penitentiary after January 21st of 2003 and trying to take care of all of the programs that I could that were positive, I went back to school and got my associate's degree in liberal studies. And I focused those studies on substance abuse and business management. Because ultimately, I would love to be able to be a drug counselor and in prison ministry. Because that's where I was at. I know how people are affected inside with volunteers that come into a facility. I've seen that firsthand. Now, not all ministers are coming into a facility for the right thing. Some of them are just coming in to say, hey, look what I can do. That's between them and God. But the ones that are bringing the word and that are serious and are actually looking out for my spiritual health and those that are locked up and looking for their spiritual health, those are the ones that are receiving the blessings. Those are the ones that are being able to get the guys converted, get the guys baptized, and then lead a study of people that are actually serious about knowing Jesus Christ. Because my playing days were over with. Then I met Manny. Some of you know Manny. Hopefully he'll be able to come back here. He runs Koinonia House in Wheaton, Illinois. He has a national ministry. He does a lot of prison ministry work. He goes to Angola, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a year. In fact, he's going back again, God willing, in August. Because, see, he was locked up. Yesterday, after I shared my little bit of a testimony, there were 4 other people in the same room that started saying the same thing. I was locked up. I was an addict, this, that, and the other. We don't know who's in our churches. Because I didn't want to show this. I was leery about letting it out that I was in prison for murder, and I was a convicted felon for murder. 1 count of murder, it didn't change anything. 2 people still died. I've never taken that lightly, because even up to this past New Year's, I still hardly sleep a wink, because I still have the image of what happened that night. So what I've been doing is just praying, because that's all I can do. It's almost like I don't want to let that go, because that's what's going to keep me centered on Christ. This happened, unfortunately, for me to be able to stand here. God didn't say, go out and do this so that I can help you get to a church and do the right thing. He took his finger off of me. And I know when that happened. See, Christmas 1992, 3 days before Christmas, I was with my mom at my aunt's house for a Christmas gathering, a family gathering. She knew something was wrong. I was already living in a mission, so this was one of those things where, okay, I'm not drunk, I'm not high this day, let's go be with the family. She knew something was wrong because she gave me a death grip hug and said, I love you, and asked me what was wrong. And as soon as I said nothing, it was just blank, no feeling in me. I believe that was the point. God said, okay, you're on your own. We're going to see what you're going to do now. Because I was dead inside. I was to that point where addiction just had me, still getting drunk and high in a rescue mission. Everything transpired. Not only, and I know I'm jumping, got my associate's degree. I became a peer mentor that was teaching substance abuse classes, lifestyle redirection classes, fatherhood classes, celebrate recovery. I said, any positive program that is placed in front of me, I'm taking advantage of it. Because, see, I knew now, at those points in my life, that I had something to give back. Because I started being serious with God. And God said, okay. See, God doesn't call those that are equipped. He calls you and then he equips you. I was sitting in Pinckneyville Correctional Center in Pinckneyville, Illinois, as a peer educator. One of the guys come up to me that was also a peer mentor and said, hey, you want to be certified with the Illinois Department of Public Health? I said, oh, no. He's like, all you got to do is teach guys about HIV, AIDS, STIs, and hepatitis. I said, oh, nope, that's it. Nope, not for me. I don't want none of that. You know? 2 weeks later, I had a book in my hand, index cards all written out in my handwriting. A month later, I was a certified peer educator, being able to teach about HIV and AIDS and STIs and hepatitis. Positive program. Who knows what I can use that for? When I left Pinckneyville in January of 2020, I went to Murfreesboro, the last facility that I would be in. It was a minimum security facility, and it was supposed to be able to help you transition to the streets. Once again, whatever positive programs, I'm taking advantage of them. Was still doing everything that I was doing at Pinckneyville, teaching classes, trying to get the positive programs needed, because I knew if I needed it after 28 years, there were other guys in that facility that also needed it. What they really needed and what I was really trying to also push was Jesus Christ. Because I can't do this on my own. If Scott was doing it, oh no, it would still be with a drink in my hand at Menard or Stateville in Illinois, behind a 30-foot wall. Because see, a lot of times while I was locked up and others, we were much freer than people on the streets. Because see, those that were serious with God and were taking advantage of the programs, we knew our addictions would have taken us down if we would have let them. People on the street still had those addictions. I lived on the street for a little bit. I was in a mission. I know what can happen when you're over here, and I know what can happen when you receive God's grace. And I'll tell you what, I'll take God's grace over anything that I had to go through. Because see, even though I was in the penitentiary, I was free. I'm not trying to brag on this, but I used to, as a peer educator and a peer mentor, I was on the move. You know, I had to have a job. I had to move, because you're not going to keep me locked up in a cell all day. You know, because that's when you start to really think about things. Regardless of if you've got the Bible open in front of you, because you get to a scripture like the woman at the well or the story about the Good Samaritan, it's like, all right, well, which one was I with the Good Samaritan? Could I have done what the woman at the well did? Go running off to town and start telling everybody about a man that I just met? That's who I tried to emulate. Because the man that knew everything about me, he was the one that saved me. His grace, his love, his mercy. You know, it was probably a month and a half, me and Chuck had a talk about my testimony. And I told him, I says, you know, it's going to happen when it happens. About a week later, I had a conversation with Christy. Now all of a sudden, here's another, Christy knew a little bit about it. Oh, we got to get you in front of the church. A month ago in this room, a little bit of the testimony came out because of someone else's words that encouraged me to be able to share my story. The grace of God is allowing Scott Stodola to stand at Sinking Creek Baptist Church in Johnson City, Tennessee, and giving my testimony. Because you have welcomed me without even knowing my past. And you just don't know how that feels. Because I was scared to death. And that was just the devil saying, you know what, somebody's going to find out about you and they're just going to kick you out. That's why I just thank everybody here at Sinking Creek. Because this, when Chuck put "Welcome Home" on that on the logo, I knew I was home. An earthly home surrounded by family. Because let me tell you something. 28 years in the penitentiary, you weren't getting this. You were not getting this. You go to a chapel service in the penitentiary, and in the back rows, everybody just wanted to sit back there and talk and do all the nonsense. Very few were up front. And I know this is a condensed version because I don't want to keep you here until 10 o'clock. you know. But my life is an open book. Any questions that you may have, I don't care what they are, just don't be surprised at the answer. I have nothing to hide. Because you know what? We're going to leave here tonight, and I don't care if you Google me. I'll let you know now there's 8 Scott Stodolas scattered throughout the country. All right? You will see my mugshot. All right? And if I was thinking, I would have put all that together for Ryan to put up on the screen, but, you know, that's the thing. Now that you know that what I've been through, heaven forbid it happens in your family. But now this is just another tool that everybody has, because everybody's been through something. Everybody can help someone. From a letter that my mother wrote me, that first phone call, I know exactly what a letter from a mother does. Exactly. I have cards from my mother that she said, I don't even want to read. Because we would go back and forth and write sappy letters. You know, I'd have her crying, and she'd send me one back, or she'd go to the store and find a Hallmark card, and I'd be sitting there crying. I'm like, somebody else wrote this. You cheated. These aren't even your words, you know. But the meaning was there. So, you know, this, like I said, this is just one of those small parts of my life. You know, I think the hardest thing that I had to deal with in all those years was in 2008, July 29th, when my dad passed away. I couldn't make it to his funeral because I'm in Illinois. He was down here in Tennessee. But that phone call that I got that day was the hardest thing I had to deal with because I had to be strong for my mom. I couldn't break down on that phone because then all of a sudden she's going to break down and make it harder on her when she's trying to do all the funeral planning. But I was able to resolve those issues with my dad. Because see, for a long time, I'm not going to keep you, I promise. For a long time, I blamed my dad for what I was going through. Because see, my dad's dad died when he was 7. So my own stupid thinking was, when I heard that when I was down here somewhere, how can this man tell me what to do if he didn't have a father to tell him what to do? We were like oil and water. So we were always, you know, we got along. Don't get me wrong. I love my father. We just didn't love each other the way we should have because it was my fault. But I was able to reconcile that situation. And I called home one night, and I apologized to him. I said, Dad, look, I'm sorry. I've been holding something against you all these years, and you have no idea what it is. And I had to tell him from here, from A to B, what it was. He dropped the phone, walked out of the room crying. My mom gets on the phone. She goes, what the hell did you just say to your father? So now I have to tell her. Now she's crying, and I'm sitting on a deck with 70 guys crying on the phone. Not really the most, the best thing to be doing in a jail, you know. He gets back on the phone. He said, Scott, thank you. I love you. I said, Dad, it wasn't you all these years. It was me. So I don't care what kind of relationships you may have with sons, daughters, with your mom and your dad. Whatever you can do to reconcile that relationship, think about it. Because I had 14 of the best years with my dad, and I was in the penitentiary. Only seeing him maybe 2 or 3 times a year when they would come up from Tennessee to visit me. But I thank God for them. Those were some good years, and I was locked up. Any questions? I know somebody's got some questions. Everybody's just looking like. Thank you. Well, it, God planted me here. You know, the seed was planted and I was just transplanted. You know, I thank you for that. You know, somebody had asked me yesterday while I was in Asheville about the church that I was in. I said, you know what, it takes a spiritual network to be able to get out of the penitentiary and go right into a church and meet two individuals that I've never talked to, that I was relying on to transport me from home to church and wherever else we ended up going, up to dinner or whatever it was. But those were times that I was grateful for. Because, see, God has plans. I don't know what they always are. I don't claim to know what they are all the time. But all I can do is say, okay, as long as it's positive and it's an opportunity for me, I'll make sure I'm prepared. Because, see, he's going to prepare me first before that opportunity arises. Because I don't want the opportunity first. Because if I'm not prepared, you called me, now you got to equip me. You know, so the message is that these last 2 days in Asheville, it was a last-minute decision for me to go. You know, I had no plans to go, but when I heard my good brother, I've known him for 11 years, was in Asheville, hey, I'm coming. Monday morning, hold the presses, Manny. I'm still on parole. I can't leave Tennessee. Texted my parole officer. Said, hey, I would appreciate it if it would be possible for me to go to Asheville to see one of my spiritual mentors, Manny Mill. I will be back the same day. Waited for the office to open, called on the phone, left a message. A half hour later, she goes, oh, yeah, you can go. Day trips are approved. You don't have to call me. Okay, well, thank you. You know, when I got back last night, I sure texted her at 11 o'clock, hey, I'm back. This morning when I left again, on last minute, hey, I'm going to Asheville, be back later. Thank you. Have a good day. But see, God, his grace, his love, his mercy, I can't thank him enough for it. And I certainly cannot thank Sinking Creek for the way I feel being able to come in here Wednesday nights, Sundays. I've bled for this church. But, you know, I like to joke a little bit. My life is your life. My story is your story. I mean, any of you guys are in school? Well, you're in school. But if you got to write a paper and you want an A, ask me some questions. We'll get you that A. You're working on a criminal degree or something? Let me know. You know, Sadie, I can tell you about dental care in the penitentiary. Okay. We can get you guys some good grades with this one. You know. But that's the thing. My life is your life. It's an open book. Questions, you just let me know. Because all I want to do is be able to serve God in a church that loves me because I love this church. Only been here 2 months? 3? Okay. Exactly. It feels like a lifetime, you know. But that's the thing. You know, I just thank you for being here. I mean, I guess that's all I got because I'm not keeping you any longer, you know. I just love you and thank you.